Hello Year 9, this is our first distance learning lesson, okay? We're looking at the topic B4. We're in the section of B4 where we're looking at respiration, and today we are looking at the effect of exercise on heart rate. And what I want to try and do is keep this real time, keep it like it's a lesson, but inevitably there's going to be times when maybe I go too fast and you might want to pause the video while you're catching up, drawing your table of results or drawing your graph, in which case that's fine, you can just pause it and then when you've caught up you can come back to me. Okay, so we are looking at what happens first of all to breathing rate and heart rate when we exercise. So we've got our intro questions. These are the ones, remember, we always just think about. We don't necessarily write any notes unless we want to, just our kind of activity to start us off. So first question is, have a little think about these. If you've got someone at home you can talk to about what the answer might be, then that's great, have a little chat. We're saying what two changes happen to breathing rate and why when we exercise. And we're also saying what changes happen to heart rate and why when we exercise. So let's think about stuff that we've talked about in the past in this topic last week. We've talked about the importance of trying to stay in aerobic respiration for as long as possible. And that is because aerobic respiration we know is much more efficient in terms of the amount of energy released to us when we are functioning, when we're exercising. And we've also talked about how when our muscles are using more energy, the rate of respiration has to increase. Remember, respiration being that chemical reaction that's happening inside our cells, releasing the energy from glucose. Now, last week we talked about how important it is to stay in that aerobic state for as long as possible. So in order to do that, we need to change our breathing rate, okay? We're breathing to get oxygen into the blood through the alveoli, those little air sacs at the end of the lungs. And in order to get more oxygen in by diffusion, we're going to do two things. Deeper breaths, faster breaths. That's going to maximize the amount of oxygen we can get to those respiring cells, okay? If you feel that that's something you'd like to write down, by all means pause and write that note. So we're trying to get oxygen to the cells because we know that's really important to stay in aerobic respiration. And the other thing that's got to happen to try and transport that oxygen to the cells is the heart rate. So heart rate will increase, and that's to move the oxygen and the glucose, don't forget, that got into the blood at the villi in the small intestine to those respiring cells to try and fuel them as much as possible, providing them with what they need so that we don't slip into anaerobic respiration and we can have that efficient energy. Eventually, when we exercise, some of those cells that are really using lots of energy and just not receiving that oxygen will go into anaerobic respiration. Okay, and we've talked about that before. We've talked about the production of lactic acid makes those muscles hurt. Okay, we may well even produce some lactic acid ourselves today because we're going to do some exercise. Okay, today's title, write in your books now please. How does heart rate change with exercise and why? And we've already begun to explore that in the discussion I've just had. So open up those books, and today's date is, well, it's Monday, I don't know the date. Start writing the title and I'll grab the date for you. Remember, this is real time, so there's going to be times when I'm not really talking, but that's fine. You can be writing your date or just waiting for other people in the class to catch up. So today is Monday the 23rd. Of course, if I reuse this video after the rotation, the date will change, but for the first group using it, group I'm teaching at the moment is Monday the 23rd. Okay, let's move on. So we've talked about this already, I talked about this last week. We're going to compare our heart rate to a friend. Now it could be that you get the data and then you send a message to your friend with that data, or it could be that someone else at home does the exercise with you and you use that data. So first of all, it's important we're sat down at the moment. We want to get our resting pulse. Okay, so we want to have our pulse when we're nice and calm. We're not really using any of our muscles. If you have a Fitbit or similar device, then you can use that device to get your heart rate, and that's going to make life really easy for you. The rest of us who don't have some kind of digital heart rate monitor, we are going to be measuring our pulse rate every 30 seconds, okay? I shouldn't have said every 30 seconds, I should say for 30 seconds, and I will count you in to doing that. And by the way, we should be writing the table as we're listening to me talk right now. Again, if you need to pause it to catch up drawing the table, that's absolutely fine. But we're going to count our heart rate for 30 seconds. And then when I say stop, we're going to double that number and write it into the table, okay? So right now, we're spending a bit of time, hopefully using our ruler and our pencil, to draw our table ready for our exercise. A bit of time to do that, just like we'd have in class. If you need to pause it because you think I'm going too fast, that's perfectly okay. Pause and come back to it in a second. So, like I said, we need our resting pulse. We need to be sat down calmly. We need to be getting our resting pulse. In actual fact, if you do have some kind of heart rate monitor like your Fitbit, then you can actually go on there and see what your resting heart rate is normally. So I'm doing that right now, just looking at my Fitbit, and my resting heart rate, normally when I'm sat down, nice and calm, is 54 beats per minute, okay? So it's quite low. Yours might be anywhere between, say, 50 and 80, possibly, as a resting heart rate. But whatever your heart rate is, we're going to just calmly, while we're drawing our table, we should be quite relaxed now. We're going to get that resting heart rate shortly. Okay, now is time to get that resting heart rate. So if you haven't drawn the table, give it a pause now. Finish drawing that table so that you're nice and ready and on track for collecting some data. So, resting heart rate, okay, now you're going to find your pulse if you haven't got your Fitbit. So you're going to find your pulse either at your wrist, maybe on your neck, and if you can't do that, then just hold on to your heart, okay? So we're finding that heart rate now. I'm going to count you in, and you're going to count your beats for the time that I say, for 30 seconds, okay? 3, 2, 1, start counting. Concentrate, keep counting. Nearly there. Good job. Okay, and stop. Take that number of beats, times it by 2, so we're doubling it, and write it as resting pulse in your table. Okay, so we're going to write that answer just here. Now, it's exercise time, people. We are going to exercise for 3 minutes. Now, it's really important to be able to compare our results to somebody else, that we are doing the same kind of activity with the same kind of intensity. Now, a really easy way to do that, if we had all the equipment in the world, would be to set a treadmill to a particular speed, a particular incline, and everybody does exactly the same thing. We don't have the luxury of that kind of equipment, so we are going to do 3 minutes of star jumps. Now, this is going to be quite tough, and some people, maybe they're halfway through, they're going to think, oh, I don't want to do any more, it's really hard work. We need to get our heart rate as high as we possibly can. Okay, so we're going to do 3 minutes of exercise. I'm going to do it with you. You won't be able to see me, but you will be able to hear me. And after that 3 minutes, I'm going to ask you to stop and immediately find your heart rate. I will count you in. Sit yourself down at that point and we'll do the same thing, counting for 30 seconds, doubling it and putting it into our table. And then we're going to keep doing that for 1 minute after exercise, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, and then we'll have our data. We'll then have an opportunity to get our matching data from a friend, and then we'll talk about how we're going to graph that data. Okay, so we're counting into exercise in 5 seconds. 3, 2, 1. It's star jump time. Seconds down. One minute in, 2 minutes left. Keep going. Give it all you've got. Let's get that heart rate as high as we can. Star jumps if you can, if not, jog on the spot. Okay, we are halfway. Just got to do that again. Two minutes down. 1 minute to go. Let's keep going. Let's get our heart rate as high as we can. Mine is currently on 121, according to my Fitbit. Seconds left. Come on, let's do this. Star jump. Keep pushing yourself. Let's get your heart rate up. See how you compare to your friend. Who's going to come out as the fittest? 15 seconds left. Ten seconds. Good job, everyone. 5 seconds. Okay, find your pulse rate. Sit yourself down. Okay, counting in now. Okay, counting, find your pulse. Keep counting. Sit down. Okay, stop. Double that number. Write it down for pulse straight after exercise, just here. Going to count in again in 15 seconds. If you've got your Fitbit, great. Okay, we're now going to do 1 minute after exercise, counting in. Find your pulse now. Still sat down. nearly there. And stop, double it. Okay, we're going to count in again shortly. 10 seconds time. Okay, and go. Nearly there. This is our 2 minutes after exercise. And stop, double it, and that goes in this box here. Last one coming up. In 5 seconds. And go. Count it for 30, doubling when I say. Okay, and stop and double it and add that to your final box just down here. I'm going to add my results to the table, okay, just so you can see what I've done. If you want to use my results to compare to, perfectly okay. So I had 54, which wasn't, it's my resting pulse. It wasn't my resting pulse at that point in time because I was stood up and I'd had a bit of a conversation with you. So I was actually, my heart rate was a bit higher. So the reason I'm saying this is because my pulse 3 minutes after exercise hasn't actually dropped all the way back down, which is what we're hoping for. My pulse straight after exercise was 138. It then dropped to 110. Oops, 110. And it then went to 76 and ended on 72. Now, you're probably going to say I'm not that fit because my heart rate hasn't come back down to normal. But you've got to remember I'm walking around, I'm having a chat, that kind of thing. So get your results. This could be an opportunity where you pause the video and you maybe send a message to your friend, have a quick conversation and collect their results, okay? And in a second, we're going to talk about how we draw a graph. Now, I think most of the groups have got graph paper now. If you haven't got graph paper, maybe you could possibly use a page out of your maths book. Don't tell maths I told you that. Or you could just try and lay it out as best you can. Okay, so we're going to have a look at drawing our graph shortly, get those results. Okay, now I've actually started drawing my graph already, so I can show you how to lay it out. We've got to remember that here we had our resting pulse 3 minutes past, and then we had our pulse straight after exercise. And I've represented that on the graph that we're going to draw. So here is the graph I've started to draw, and I've got resting pulse. Then we had 1, 2, 3 minutes, and then I've written straight after exercise. Then we measured our pulse 1 minute after exercise, 2 minutes after exercise, and 3 minutes after exercise. So that's how you need to lay that out. So once again, if you need to pause the video, pause it on that so that you can see how to lay it out. On this side of the graph, I've got this zigzag line. This is because my lowest value was 54. So I've got no reason to do my graph any lower than 50. Okay, so here I'm going to have my first number at 50. Okay, now I need to get up to 138. I'm going to call that 140 and I'm going to plan how I do that. So if I went 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100, 110, 120, 130, 140. As luck would have it, it will exactly fit. Okay, you might want to bring your graph down a bit if you've got a bigger range. So, using the big boxes as my guide, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100, 110, 120, 130, and up to 140. Now that works really well because I'm evenly spaced. Every little square is going to be worth 1, so it's nice and easy to plot. I'm going to want to use 2 different colours, one for me, one for my friend, okay? I'm actually just going to plot me so you get the general idea of how to do it. Okay, so resting pulse, 54. Okay, that's what it was for me. You're plotting your results. Straight after exercise, I was all the way up here, got to make sure I'm in the right place, 138. Then I dropped a minute later to 110. Then I was on 76. Make sure you're plotting accurately, getting them exactly in the right spot. And then I went to 72. Okay. Now, I'm just going to put that back on my screen for a second, just while I join my lines. Now, quite often we say let's not join our lines. In this situation, we're going to draw the lines because we don't know how the heart rate changed between those points, but we do know what the heart rate was on those particular points. So here I go. And I'm also going to label my y-axis, not with y-axis, I'm going to say heart rate, and then in brackets the unit, beats per minute. Okay, I'm going to show you what I've done. Okay, so I've got this heart rate in beats per minute on the side here. I've got my data plotted, looks pretty good. I think if I'd had a bit of a chill and maybe not chatted so much, I could have got this down a bit more. Okay, so time to draw your graph, and you're going to have 2 sets of data on there. Maybe use a different colour, maybe make a key saying, you know, like this is me and this is whoever it is who is going to have the friend's data. Okay, this could be an opportunity to pause. It's going to take you maybe 10 minutes to get your graph drawn. Have a go. And I'll come back to you in a second. Hopefully you're pausing it now. And we're going to look at analysing that data. So, I'm going to just move on to the next slide. This is where we're going to analyse, and you might want to write something here. So, we have got some data. And we have got 3 different indicators of fitness that help us to compare us to our friend and see who is the fittest. Now you can see red line is the unfit person and blue line is the fit person. Now this could be that your lines cross over. So maybe you've got 2 indicators of fitness that are better than your friend, and maybe they've got 1, or it could be that you're winning in all categories, but there are 3 indicators we're going to look at. And I'd like you to make a conclusion for each of the indicators of fitness to decide who is the fittest. So you're going to write this in your book, stick your graph in if you can. If you've got stapler or if you've got glue, if you haven't, just fold it, put it in position, we can glue that later. So, indicators of fitness, we can see that the unfit person has a higher resting heart rate. Here is the unfit person with the high resting heart rate. So if your heart rate, when you were just sat not exercising, is higher, you are not as fit as the person who had the lower resting heart rate. So that's our first indicator of fitness. When doing the same activity with the same intensity for the same amount of time, the unfit person will have a higher heart rate. Okay, so again, like I said, your lines might cross over here, but if you've got the higher heart rate after exercise, then unfortunately you are less fit. So if your heart rate stays lower, you are fitter. And then we've got this thing called recovery time. It's the amount of time it takes for your heart rate to return to normal or as close to normal. And the shorter that time is, the better the indicator of fitness. So here you can see the blue person has a short recovery time. Their heart rate drops quite quickly. That makes them fitter. And the red person, it takes a lot longer after exercise for their heart rate to return to normal. They are less fit. So the last thing we're going to do today is we're going to do maybe 3 sentences in our book, and we could say something like, I am fitter than my friend because I have a lower resting heart rate and a shorter recovery time. However, they are fitter than I am because their heart rate during exercise was lower than mine. That's the kind of phrasing I'm looking for you to write in your book. Okay, again, you might need to pause to give yourself time to write. We're going to use all 3 indicators of fitness in our conclusion. Short conclusion, maybe 4 lines in your book. Okay, and it goes along the lines of, I am fitter than my friend because, and then you give the reasons why you might be fitter, and then you give the reasons why they might be fitter. It might be that one of you wins on all counts, and that's fine, but just explain how you know who is the fittest and why. Okay, so we're working on that in our books, getting our last paragraph done for the lesson. Okay, so I am fitter because my resting heart rate is lower, or I am less fit because my heart rate during exercise is higher, or I am fitter because my recovery time is shorter. Okay, once you've done that, we are done for the day. Well done. Hope you enjoyed that and that you now understand how you can compare your fitness with somebody else. And we haven't got a lesson on Tuesday, so we'll be coming back on Wednesday, and we're going to talk about removing lactic acid and oxygen debt. Hope you enjoyed that. Thanks.